Good afternoon, dear learners. I am Glarmina.P.Academic Counsellor, IGNOU RC Cochin 14000. So, our course is MPC-004 Advanced Social Psychology. In the previous session, we went through Unit 2, that is Social Cognition Attribution Theory. So, now we can go to Unit 3. It's methods of social psychology. So methodology, it involves development of procedures for making various kinds of observations which provide the building blocks for theories and generalizations. So it refers to all aspects of the implementation of methods. So under method, this methodology is coming. So method is meant for formulating the investigation. So in this unit, we can see about various characteristics, features of social psychology methodology, needs and aims of social psychological research, how we can differentiate between common sense explanations and scientific explanations. We can differentiate between theoretical and applied research. We can analyze various methods used in social psychology, and we can explain meta-analysis. So social psychological approach. In this approach, we can see three major operations: careful collection of observation or data. So we are carefully collecting the data, and we are orderly integrating these observations into hypotheses and theories, and then we test the adequacy of these hypotheses and theories in terms of whether they can successfully predict future observations. So it is based on observation and experience than pure logic. So methods, that is how we are formulating the investigation. There are many methods of data collection. These things you are studying in detail in research methodology paper. So we can fastly go through this section. So methods of data collection. We can collect data through observation methods, by studying the previous documents, through questionnaires, interview, testing, experiment, etc. And the methods can be analyzed through various statistical methods like correlational and factor analysis. And there are logical and theoretical ways also for construction of typology and various means of explanations, etc. So our discussion in this chapter is limited to the following methods. So there are observational method, correlational method, experimental method, and ethnography method. These are the four methods which are discussing in this chapter. So first one is observational method. So it is the old method of social psychology. We simply observe the phenomena under study as it occurs naturally. So this method plays a very important role in the collection of data on overt behavior and the actions of individuals. So the method proceeds in two stages, like describing behaviors from description to causes. So the behavior may have many causes. So we are analyzing these causes after observing the behaviors. And it can be participant and non-participant observation, and can be informal or formal, structured or unstructured one. All this you have studied before in research methodology paper. Informal method of observation. we can record the actions relevant to the research question without disturbing the occurrence of behavior. In non-participant observation, we record the people's behavior but do not actually participate in their activities. It is meant for getting genuine results, genuine behaviors. Next comes correlational method. Here we are finding the relationship between two or more variables under study such that the systematic increase or decrease in the magnitude of one variable is accompanied by systematic increase or decrease in the magnitude of the other variables. So we are finding the relationship between the variables of interest to the researcher, and there are three different types of correlations. We get positive correlation, negative correlation, and zero correlation. In positive correlation, as one variable increases, the other also increases. Like for example, income and happiness, these are positively connected. And if we see that if money is associated with lower happiness, then we can say that it is negatively correlated. And if it does not go along with happiness, then we can say it is as zero correlation. And the degree of relationship is assessed mathematically and is expressed as a correlation coefficient ranging from +1 to -1 degree. Then comes the experimental method. It is the dominant research method for testing theories that predict the causal relationship between variables. Only from this experimental method we can find the cause and effect relationship. And in the booklet, in the study material, you can see various terminologies that is used in experimental research, like experiment, hypothesis, variable, independent variable, dependent variable, experimental group, control group, statistics, measurement, and random assignments. And there is one method called quasi-experimental method, in which the researcher has less than complete control. The lack of control over the testing arises from the very fact that it is an everyday life setting. But the benefit is the realism of the setting is relatively high and the control will be relatively low. And various experimental designs, you may know, like there is one-shot design, post-test control group design, pre-test post-test design, factorial designs are there. All you have studied in detail. Then comes the threats to validity in experimental research. Validity refers to the extent to which a method of measurement measures what it is supposed to measure. So there is internal construct and external validity. And the validity of an experiment may be threatened due to the following reasons, like confounding variables. Then confounding variables, it is a failure to separate two variables with the results, that their effects cannot be independently ascertained. For example, if in an experiment on memory and age, all the older participants are female and all the younger are male, then sex and age are confounded and the memory data cannot be properly interpreted. So sex and age are the confounding variables. Then another threat is social desirability. In this case, the participants are usually keen to be seen in a positive light, so they feel reluctant to provide honest, genuine reports. Then comes the demand characteristics. Here, the individuals who know that they are being studied will often be curious about what the experimenter is looking at and what types of responses are expected. Then comes the experimenter expectancy effect. Here, the experimenter's own hypothesis or expectation affect the outcome of the research. So, participant will behave in such a way as to confirm the hypothesis. And to avoid these threats, there are many methods like post-experimental inquiry we will give. Like the participant is carefully interviewed after participation in an experiment. Then comes obtrusive measures, also called non-reactive measure. Here the participant is not aware of and which therefore cannot influence his or her behavior. Then comes the cover story. It is a false but supposedly plausible explanation of the purpose of an experiment. So we will just limit the operation of demand characteristics through this cover story. Next is the method of blinding. There is single blind procedure and double blind procedure. It is to reduce the experimenter expectancy effect, that the condition will not be and the participant will not be known about the experiment before. Next comes the ethnographic method. It comes under qualitative research. Ethnography, the word means writing about people. It literally means a portrait of a people. It is a written description of a particular culture, customs, beliefs and behaviors based on information collected through field work. It is the art and science of describing a group or culture. Here we gather the information through sources like interviews, observations, conversations and previous documents. So we are studying the behavior in everyday context in this study, and it is a very in-depth study also. The methods of ethnography include macroethnography, microethnography. Macroethnography, we study broadly defined cultural groupings such as Indians. In microethnography, we narrowly define cultural groupings like young working class women, members of Congress, etc. Then comes emic perspective. Here we are the members of the given culture perceive how the members of the given culture perceive their world. This thing is studying. In ethic perspective, how a non-member perceive and interpret the behaviors is being studied. And situational reduction, it refers to the view that ethnographers that social structures and social dynamics emerge from and may be reduced analytically to the accumulated effects of micro-situational interactions. Then symbols, it is a focus of ethnographic research, and here the cultural connotations associated with the symbols are being focused. Then cultural patterning, we are observing the cultural patterns that forms the relationships. Then tacit knowledge, it is deeply embedded cultural beliefs which are assumed in culture's way of perceiving the world. Then comes meta-analysis. It is pooling information to confirm and generalize with the statistical procedures to review and synthesize empirical findings systematically. So the researcher will find as many studies as possible on the same topic and uses many statistical methods to reanalyze it. So next comes the fourth unit. It is called, it is the current trends in social psychology and ethical issues that comes under social psychological researches. So it is the utilization of social psychological principles and research methods in real world settings to solve individual and societal problems. Then how social psychology is related with, or what are the other fields, or how we can apply social psychology in different fields. So population psychology, in population psychology, how we can apply social psychology. In population psychology, it concentrates on the effects of how rapid expansion of the number of humans on this planet and on efforts to control this expansion. And the social psychology is important in changing attitude and enhancing sensitivity. Then health psychology, how the different lifestyle changing and development, stress, work life and social support, family environment affects our health. Then comes environmental psychology, how stress, noise, temperature, pollution affects our behavior. So industrial organization psychology is another application area for social psychology. Here we are analyzing the behaviors in work settings, the conflicts, the resources and the grudges that can cause individuals to behave in a certain manner. And in legal system and social psychology, we are learning about eyewitness testimony and defendants, etc. The growing influence of cognitive perspective can be seen in the field of social psychology. Like nowadays, the cognitive factors are being emphasized in the field of social psychology, like attitudes, beliefs, values, inferences, etc. So we are giving more attention to the cognitive processes that underlie them, how our memory operates, what are human reasoning processes, how a new information is integrated with the existing schemas, etc. The researchers are also studying how feelings shapes thought and how thought shaped feelings. And a multicultural perspective can also be seen in this area. Now comes some of the major ethical issues in social psychological research. First one is deception. Deception can be seen as essential in the field of social research in many of the fields, in many of the researches in social psychology. There are many kinds of deception. Implicit deception, it occurs when the actual situation is so different from what the subject or the individual expect that they behave under incorrect assumptions. Next comes technical deception. Here the equipments and the procedures of an experiment are misrepresented. Then comes role deception. Here the subject or the participant may actually be a confederate of the experimenter, or the experimenter may pose as a fellow student in a classroom. These are all meant for reducing the biases that can be possible in psychological researches. Then comes informed consent. The subject must voluntarily agree to participate in social psychological research without any force and must understand what the participation involves. Then comes debriefing. Here we are explaining in some detail the purpose and the procedure of the research. Then comes minimal risk. the possible risks for participating in the research should not be greater than ordinarily encountered in daily life. The participant must be allowed to make decisions based on adequate information also. So it is meant for reducing the risk among the participants of social psychological research. So with this we are ending our unit 3 and 4. Hope the session was useful for you. Thank you.